shortly. Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Private Anne Collishaw. We warmly welcome the family of Lieutenant Thomas Currie Derrick, Victoria Cross Distinguished Conduct Medal, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Please sit if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Thomas Currie Derrick, VC, DCM. Thomas Derrick was born at Medindi, South Australia on the 20th of March 1914, the oldest of 7 children born to David and Eva Derrick. Growing up, Derrick attended Sturt Street Public School, often travelling barefoot as his parents were unable to afford shoes. He went on to attend La Fevre High School in Port Adelaide. Young Derrick loved sport, particularly Australian rules football, but also cricket, boxing and swimming. His exploits in the Port River are believed to be the origins of his nickname, Diver. Derrick left school at the age of 14 and went to work as a baker's assistant in Port Adelaide. To supplement his income, he repaired bicycles and sold newspapers. During a dance at Adelaide in 1932, Derrick met his one true love, Clarence Beryl Leslie. The pair were married at St Lawrence's Catholic Church in North Adelaide on the 24th of June 1939. When the Second World War began, Derrick did not join the initial rush to enlist. However, after France fell to the Germans in June 1940, he enlisted on the 5th of July, joining the newly raised 2nd 48th Battalion. While he took to soldiering well, he initially found military discipline difficult to deal with. The 2nd 48th Battalion paraded through the streets of Adelaide in October, but the unit's embarkation for service abroad was delayed. The battalion boarded the transport ship SS Stratherton on the 17th of November and sailed for the Middle East. When the ship made a brief stop at Perth, Derrick broke ship and went sightseeing in the city. He was confined on board for his trouble, and after release, he was charged and fined for punching a fellow soldier who taunted him over his confinement. After arriving in Palestine, the 2nd 48th Battalion was sent to Alcantara, where the men began training for desert warfare. The battalion held sports carnivals during breaks in training, and Derrick often won the cross-country races. He also became well known for running a book on the outcome of each race. Offsetting his larrikin nature was a more sensitive side. He collected butterflies and wrote poetry. He also maintained a diary during his service and wrote frequently to Beryl. In March 1941, the 2nd 48th Battalion joined the 9th Division in Libya. Shortly after arriving, he was forced to fall back to the port town of Tobruk as part of the withdrawal in the face of the Axis offensive. Arriving in Tobruk in early April, over the next 6 months, Derrick was involved in actions against Italian and German forces seeking to break the siege. After being withdrawn from Tobruk in October, Derrick's battalion was sent to Syria, where it performed garrison duties. In June 1942, General Rommel's forces broke the Allied line and advanced on Alexandria. The 2nd 48th Battalion was rushed back to Egypt and went into action at Tel Isa on the morning of the 10th of July. Derrick was prominent in the action, taking out 3 Italian machine gun positions and capturing around 100 prisoners. Later that day, the battalion was ordered to recapture a position that had been lost to the Germans. Over the next 2 hours, Derrick damaged 2 tanks with sticky bombs and led his men with courage and determination. He was given much of the credit for the successful action and was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, according to his company commander, Captain Robert Chilliker. Derrick's citation admitted much of what he had done. Derrick was promoted to sergeant in late July, and at the end of October, his battalion was once again in the thick of battle, this time at Alamein. Derrick was wounded in the arm and the buttock, but returned to the battalion just days later. The 2nd 48th Battalion sailed for Australia in February 1943, arriving in Melbourne towards the end of the month. Derrick returned to Beryl in Adelaide as soon as he was granted leave. In Australia, the battalion underwent reorganisation and training as men prepared for jungle operations. After sailing for New Guinea in August, and after a brief period of training at Milne Bay, the men took part in the landing near Lae. The battalion was then involved in capturing Finschon and holding it against determined Japanese counterattack. By November, the Australians had resumed their advance and the 26th Brigade, to which Derrick's unit belonged, was ordered to capture Saddleburg, a small town at the top of densely wooded hill. Fighting for the hill began in mid-November and both sides suffered heavy casualties. On the 20th of November, Derrick, who had been acting Company Sergeant Major, was given command of 11 Platoon, Bravo Company, after all but one of the company's leaders had become casualties. 4 days later, he led his platoon in the final attack on Saddleburg, for which he would be awarded the Victoria Cross. Having made many attempts to clamber up the slopes to its objectives, the company had been repelled by machine gun fire and grenades. With light fading and having received the order to retire, Derrick requested one last attempt. The citation for his award describes how, moving ahead is his forward section, he personally destroyed with grenades an enemy post which had been holding up his section. He then ordered his second section around on the right flank. This section came under heavy fire from light machine guns and grenades from 6 enemy posts. Without regard for personal safety, he clambered forward, well ahead of the leading men of the section, and hurled grenade after grenade, so completely demoralising the enemy that they fled, leaving weapons and grenades. By this action alone, the company was able to gain its first foothold on the precipitous ground. Not content with the work already done, he returned to the first section and, together with the third section of his platoon, advanced to deal with the 3 remaining posts in the area. On 4 separate occasions, he dashed forward and threw grenades at a range of 6 to 8 yards until these positions were finally silenced. In all, Sergeant Derrick had reduced 10 enemy posts from the vital ground he had captured. The remainder of the battalion moved on to capture Saddleburg the following morning. The Japanese withdrew during the night, and at 9 a.m. on the 25th of November, the 2nd 48th Battalion occupied Saddleburg. Derrick was given the honour of raising the Australian flag over the town. Derrick was later posted to an officer cadet training unit at Portsea in Victoria, where he shared a tent with Reg Saunders. The pair gained their commission with the rank of lieutenant on the 26th of November 1944. Derrick requested to return to the 2nd 48th Battalion, and this was granted after intense lobbying by his commanding officer. The 2nd 48th Battalion was sent to Morotai in April, and on the 1st of May was involved in the landing at Tarakan, part of a wider campaign to regain control of the Tarakan oil fields. On the 22nd of May, the battalion encountered fierce Japanese resistance on top of geographical feature known as Freda. Derrick's platoon was involved in a savage, close-quarter fighting, and he was wounded in the stomach and thigh. Corporal O'Connell, a mate of Derrick since Tobruk, inquired how Derrick was and received the understated reply, "She's right, how are you?" O'Connell had been wounded in the same action. Derrick was still organising the platoon as medics were preparing to evacuate him, and was angry when the platoon was ordered to pull back to allow a less airstrike to be made on the hill. Despite undergoing surgery, Thomas Derrick died the following day. News of his death devastated those who knew him and cast a pall among the wider AIF. He was initially laid to rest in the 2nd 48th Battalion Cemetery on Tarakan, but was later reinterred in the Labun War Cemetery. He was 31 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection, but this, one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Thomas Currie Derrick, VC, DCM, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.